Hi, it's me, Olivia. Welcome to my channel. Please subscribe to my channel for interesting stories and visit my Patreon page for early access, link in the description. Thanks. The following week I moved out of my dorm room. This made my roommate happy. He wasn't happy with my other self. And the laser treatments started. They stung, but nothing like the waxing did. They wouldn't do the eyebrows, so it was back to Barb to have the brows done again. This time she made them a very fine line with a nice high arch. I loved the look. I still went to classes in male mode, but was underdressed in pantyhose and panties all the time. No one said much, but there were the odd looks every once in a while. The people from the theater, as always, were great. The remainder of the year passed quickly. The laser treatments were done, no facial or body hair from the neck down. We had decided to spend the summer, as I usually did, with Aunt Jane on her ranch, just outside of Salt Lake City. Jackie couldn't wait to meet her. We traveled across the country as two co-eds, no one the wiser. My female side had come up very well. There was only two ways that anyone could tell I wasn't really a girl, one if I told them, and the other if they looked, and no one but Jackie was going to have a look. When we arrived at Aunt Jane's, she was surprised to see me fully dressed, as I had never traveled that way before. I introduced Jackie to Aunt Jane, and they hit it off right away. Aunt Jane told me to go unload the car. She wanted to talk to Jackie. I drove over to the guest house and started unloading. I could see, but not hear, Aunt Jane and Jackie. They were sitting on the porch swing, having a very nice talk. Just as I was finishing the unloading, Jackie walked up and with a big grin said, "Can I help?" I came back with, "Oh, just in time. All the work is done." Then, somewhat serious, she says, "Aunt Jane said to come over for dinner about 7. She has something that she wants to talk to us about." "You two had a nice chat. Care to tell?" "Not now. It was girl talk, maybe later. We better get unpacked, cleaned up, and over to the house for dinner." We walked the few yards to the house and walked in. As usual, it smelled great. Aunt Jane was a good cook, and if I wasn't careful, I'd put weight back on. The house was a very nice log cabin-style house that sat on about 20 acres, with the little guest house also being made out of logs. Aunt Jane walked out of the kitchen with 2 bowls, mashed potatoes, and green beans. The meat was already on the table. We sat and said grace. Over dinner, we talked about me and the changes. I could tell that Jackie had told her quite a bit. Aunt Jane wanted to know how I felt about it, and I told her that I loved it and didn't think that I could ever go back to male mode. And, of course, she wanted all the details from my point of view. After dinner, we went in what would have been a den, but this was decorated in a very feminine way. Out came a bottle of wine, and we sat and continued our talk. About an hour later, Aunt Jane out of the blue said, "I have cancer and about 6 weeks to live." Jackie and I just sat there, dumbfounded. "There's nothing they can do? Have you checked with all the specialists? What can we do?" I blurted out, "No, there is nothing that can be done. It's too far along. I have checked with everyone that I can, and there is nothing that can be done. I'm not in any pain, at least yet. And when that happens, I'll only have a very short time." At this point, I just started to cry and couldn't stop. Jackie held me, and I could hear her sobbing too. Aunt Jane said, "Girls, please don't cry. It's not going to help. And I need your help in other ways now. But, Aunt Jane, I love you, and I'm not ready to lose you." "I know, honey, but there is nothing to be done." It took me about 10 minutes to compose myself. We walked out onto the porch and sat there. "What can we do to help, Aunt Jane?" Jackie said. "Come back for breakfast about 8 and we'll sit down and I'll tell you all about it. Now, off to bed you two. You've had a long trip." I got up and gave Aunt Jane a big hug and kiss. She whispered in my ear, "I like your friend." I whispered back, "More than a friend." Jackie also gave her a big hug and kiss on the cheek. We walked back to the guest house hand in hand, without a word being said. Sleep didn't come that night. I sat on the porch in my nightgown watching the stars. I didn't even hear Jackie come out and sit with me. The next 2 weeks were spent helping Aunt Jane put everything in order. And I learned that since I was her only relative, that the ranch and all her holding would become mine. By this time, I had resolved myself to the facts and was going to make Aunt Jane's final weeks as comfortable as possible. She then gave us a surprise, as she felt we needed to get away from the ranch for a while. She had set up a week's stay for us at Old Faithful Lodge in Yellowstone National Park. We went and enjoyed it as much as we could under the circumstances. When we returned to the ranch, we found that Aunt Jane was becoming very weak. We had a full-time nurse for her, plus anything else that she needed. She passed away 2 weeks later. The funeral was very hard on both Jackie and I. A couple of weeks later, we moved our things into the house and the big bedroom. When we went to the lawyers for the reading of the will, I learned that I had inherited, along with the ranch, a little more than $500,000 in stocks and bonds. Jackie and I decided to transfer schools and finish our studies in Utah. I was able, through some quick thinking, to change my name to Cathy and my sex to female on my school records. We lived on the ranch and traveled the 20 minutes to the university every day, and also became involved with the theater there. Jackie finished her studies and wanted to work, so she found a job with a research firm just outside of Salt Lake City. They also paid the university fees for advanced studies. So, she started on her master's. I found out later that this firm was heavy into genetic research. I continued my studies in computer science and graduated the next year. I found a job with an upscale computer firm that had a telecommuting policy, which meant that I could work from home and only go into the office for meetings. Jackie had another surprise for me. One day out of the blue, she said, "Do you remember the talk your Aunt Jane and I had the first day I met her?" Well, your Aunt Jane was really your Uncle Jim. I just stood there in shock. Jackie and I had been together now for about 4 years. She had her master's. And things couldn't be better. We were really in love and learning more and more about each other every day. We have wanted to get married, but couldn't figure out how two women or a woman and someone that looked more like a woman than a man could be married. I started digging on the internet and found a church that was very open to the transgendered community, and dropped them an email to find out about marriages. The minister returned a message very quickly and said that he didn't see a problem and that he would like to meet with us. Jackie and I packed a bag for an overnight trip and took a drive to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. We met with the minister, Dr. White, and told him the complete story. He didn't seem too surprised that I was really a male, but that it would make it easier for us to get a license. He told us that there was a wedding between 2 women tomorrow and we were welcome to attend. And that after that he would help us file the correct papers and plan a simple wedding. The wedding was interesting. Both ladies were dressed in simple but beautiful gowns. The ceremony lasted 15 minutes and was followed by a short reception. Dr. White introduced us to the happy couple, and we had a lovely chat. We told them how lovely they were and what we were planning. They were very happy for us and said that they would like to attend our wedding. We then sat down with Dr. White and filled out some papers. He told us that we didn't have to go to the courthouse for anything, as he was a notary and would take care of everything for us. We set a date for 2 weeks. On the way out, we told the 2 girls, Patty and what was planned. They said they would be there with a few friends. On the way home, we argued over who was going to wear the wedding dress. We finally decided that like Patty and we both were. 2 weeks later in the small church in Jackson Hole, Jackie and I were married. Patty and were there with a number of their friends. They had even set up a small reception for us. It was great finding new friends like this. We then invited Patty and to come visit us at the ranch. A few weeks later, Jackie came home one Friday from work with a real mischievous smile and that little twinkle in her eye. I said, "Okay, what are you up to now?" "Well, we have had something very interesting going on at work the past few months. And I think you might be interested." "Okay, give." "Remember me telling you that we have been working on a genetic formula to cure Alzheimer's?" "Yes." "Well, one of the formulas had a very interesting side effect. We have been through all the testing on this and even on a couple of volunteer test subjects without any side effects. And it's had the same effect every time." "Go on. How would you like to not have to use the breast forms anymore? And keep your male parts fully functional? And no surgery for implants. In simple words, become a balanced blend of masculine and feminine traits. You have my undivided attention. I have wanted my own breasts for a long time, but have a real aversion to surgery. And Jackie has never wanted me to take hormones. There is more. It will soften your skin, redistribute you body fat. And if you still had body hair, it would become so fine that you would hardly notice it. And think, when I play with your breasts, you would know what it really feels like. And no more breast forms, more fun for both of us. Are you sure there are no side effects to this? If I wasn't sure, I wouldn't even mention this. You're the last person that I would want to hurt. Let's have supper and I'll think about it. You know you can bend me around your little finger when you want something. And I think you want this for us, don't you? I said with a little smile. She just smiled back at me and gave me a big kiss. We sat down for supper, and she sat there with a smile that you would see on the cat that swallowed the canary. Okay, I said, fill me in on the details. We start out with 1 shot a week for 6 weeks, then 2 shots a day for a week, and again 1 shot a week for 6 weeks. During the first 6 weeks, you won't feel much. Just a little tired. But for the week of shots, you will sleep most of the time. I'll be taking a week's vacation and staying home with you. At the end of the week of shots, you will wake up with a fair-sized pair of breasts, and then over the next 6 weeks, you will continue to grow depending on the size your mother was. Your skin will get softer, and the body fat will rearrange itself. We've done this on 3 volunteers, and it has worked like a charm. And the breasts will be real, with true milk glands and all. You will need to get mammograms, do breast self-exams, and everything. So, I'm going to be the 4th guinea pig? Sort of. Everyone at work feels that this is a very safe formula. Okay, I'm a glutton for punishment. When do we start? I say, knowing that I'm finally going to have my own breasts and that there is nothing to worry about, as Jackie is in charge and wouldn't let anything happen to me. No time like the present, she said as she walked over, opened her briefcase, and removed a fairly large hypodermic needle filled with a clear liquid. You can read me like a book, can't you? You knew I would go along with it, didn't you? She smiled and said, drop your slacks and panties. Please subscribe for the next part and visit my Patreon page for early access. Thanks.